It had been 17 years since he last saw her. Yet every morning, when Daniel walked past the old cafe on Elm Street, he could still see her in his mind laughing behind the window, her hands wrapped around a mug too big for her small fingers. Back then, their love had been the kind of story that felt unstoppable. Until her father stopped it. "You'll ruin your future with him," he told her. "He'll never be enough." And just like that, she was gone. Letters unanswered, calls ignored. Daniel tried to move on, but how do you forget someone who taught you what love is? He built a simple life, quiet, stable, untouched by the noise of the world. He never married. He couldn't. Every time he tried, her face was there, smiling in the back of his mind. Then one rainy afternoon, as he closed up his bookstore, he saw her. Older, more fragile, but still her, Emily. She stood across the street, soaked and trembling, holding an umbrella that had given up on the weather. Their eyes met, and 17 years vanished in a heartbeat. She walked toward him slowly, each step breaking the silence of all the years between them. "Daniel," she whispered. He swallowed hard, unable to speak. "You still live here?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yeah," he managed. "I guess I was waiting." She let out a broken laugh. "You shouldn't have. Maybe not," he said softly. "But I did." The rain kept falling, but neither of them moved. Somewhere between regret and relief, time began to breathe again. She finally whispered, "I left him. I'm alone now." Daniel's heart cracked open. "You were never alone," he said quietly. "Not to me." The cafe light flickered across her face, and for the first time in years, she looked like the girl he remembered only now. She had the sadness of a woman who'd learned what love costs when it's denied. For the next few days, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about her. The sound of her voice had cracked something open inside him, a door he thought he'd sealed years ago. Emily hadn't come back to stay, at least. That's what she said. But her eyes told a different story. 2 days later, she returned to the bookstore. No umbrella this time, no pretense. "I thought you might not want to see me again," she said quietly. Daniel looked up from the counter. "You thought wrong," she smiled, small and uncertain. "I kept your letters," she confessed. "Every single one. I just couldn't read them back then." He swallowed hard. "Why now?" "Because now I can," she whispered. They sat among the smell of old books and rain-soaked air, and for the first time in years, talked. Not about what they were, but what they could have been. Emily told him about her marriage, the cold house, the polite dinners, the silence that grew louder with every year. Daniel listened without judgment. When she spoke of the divorce, she looked almost relieved. "I thought love was supposed to be safe," she said. "Turns out it's supposed to be real." He reached for her hand, hesitant at first, then sure. "You can't rewrite the past," he said softly. "But you can stop letting it hurt." She met his eyes, and for the first time since she walked out all those years ago, she let herself cry. That night, as Daniel closed the store, he found her note under the counter. Asterisk, "If you still believe in us. Meet me at the pier tomorrow at sunset." Asterisk, he read it twice, heart pounding like it used to. Maybe this was what waiting all those years had been for, not to relive the past, but to finally start the story that never got to begin. The sun was already setting when Daniel reached the pier. The horizon burned in shades of gold and crimson, waves crashing gently against the wooden posts. He half expected her not to come after all. Fate had never been kind to them. But then he saw her, Emily, standing by the railing, hair dancing in the wind like it had all those years ago. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "You came," she said softly. "You ask," he replied. They stood there for a long moment, the silence thick with everything left unsaid. Finally, Emily spoke. "When I got married, I told myself I was doing the right thing. For my family, for stability, for peace." Her voice cracked. "But it never felt like home." Daniel's gaze softened. "Home isn't a place, Emily. It's a person." She looked at him, eyes shimmering with old love and fresh pain. "You waited all this time." Why, he took a breath. Because I couldn't start something real with anyone else. Not while I still dreamed about you walking back through that door. She blinked away tears. You should hate me, maybe, he said. But love doesn't follow logic. It just stays. The last of the sun slipped beneath the sea. And with it, the years seemed to dissolve. Emily stepped closer, her hand finding his. I don't deserve this, she whispered. You don't have to, he said. You just have to stay this time. The air was cool. The world silent except for their breathing. And for the first time since they were teenagers, there were no barriers, no parents, no lies, no fear. Just them standing in the twilight, holding on to what time had finally given back. The next evening, Daniel sat at the pier long before the sun began to set. He didn't know if she would come again. Part of him feared she wouldn't. The ocean was calm, the air heavy with the smell of rain. Just like that first day they met as kids. He remembered her laughter echoing off the docks, the way she used to dip her toes in the water and tell him that someday they'd run away together. But dreams have a way of fading when reality takes hold. Then, footsteps. He turned, and there she was again. Emily, holding 2 cups of coffee, smiling nervously. I thought maybe you'd like this better than rain, she said, handing him one. He laughed softly. Still too much sugar. Always, she smiled. They sat in silence, watching gulls dive into the water. I don't even know where to begin, Emily said finally. Start anywhere, he replied. I'll catch up, she told him about her marriage. About the year she tried to convince herself she was happy. About the day she packed her things and left. It wasn't love, she whispered. It was survival. Daniel reached for her hand. Then maybe this time. You live for something real. She looked at him, eyes trembling. I'm scared, Daniel. What if we've changed too much? He smiled faintly. Then we'll meet again as who we are now. The sun dipped lower, painting the world in orange light. She rested her head on his shoulder, whispering, You waited all these years, and you're still here. He nodded, his voice breaking. Because you're still the only one who ever made time stop. And as waves kissed the shore, they both understood. Love hadn't died, it had only been waiting for the right moment to begin again. The following morning, Daniel woke to a message from Emily. Asterisk, can we talk somewhere quiet? Asterisk, his heart tightened. Her words always carried both warmth and uncertainty. They met at the old garden behind the library, their secret place in high school, where initials carved into the oak tree still whispered their past. She stood by it, tracing the faded letters D+E. It's strange, she said, her voice trembling. No matter how much time passes, this tree still remembers. Daniel smiled softly. Maybe because it was never meant to forget. They sat on the bench beneath it, and Emily took a deep breath. When I left you, it wasn't because I stopped loving you, she confessed. It was because I was scared. My father made me believe love without approval was doomed to fail. Daniel's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. And did it? She hesitated. Yes, because I built a life on fear instead of love. Her honesty broke something open inside him, not anger, but release. I waited because I wanted to believe love like ours doesn't just vanish, he said. But I also waited because I didn't know how to live without it. Emily's tears fell silently. Do you think it's too late? She asked. He looked at her, really looked at the woman time had weathered, but not broken. For us, no. But it's not the same story anymore. She frowned. What do you mean? Back then, we were trying to run away from the world. Now we can finally face it. For a long moment, the air between them was filled with the hum of cicadas and the ache of years lost. Then she reached out, fingers brushing his. Then maybe this time, we stay. And just like that, under the same tree where they once dreamed of forever, 2 people who had lived lifetimes apart began to dream. Again, not of escaping the world, but of building a new one together. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of seeing Emily again began to feel natural almost. as if the years apart had been a long pause between the sentences of the same story. She started coming by the bookstore every afternoon, sometimes helping him organize shelves, sometimes just sitting quietly with a cup of tea. They didn't talk about the past much anymore. It hung between them like a painting they both knew too well. One evening, as rain tapped softly on the windows, Emily looked up from a book. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Every day. But then I remember if you had. Maybe we wouldn't have learned what love really means. And what does it mean now?" she asked. He thought for a moment. It's not the promise of forever. It's choosing each other. Even when forever doesn't make sense, she exhaled, tears glinting in her eyes. "You make it sound so simple." "It is," he said softly, "when it's real." Later that night, they walked through the quiet streets, the air crisp and full of that sweet ache that Comey's only from rediscovering something once lost. When they reached her car, she hesitated. "I told my son about you," she said. "He asked if you were the one that got away." Daniel chuckled softly. "And what did you say?" "That sometimes the ones who get away don't really go anywhere. They just wait for the right time to come back." Daniel took her hand, his thumb brushing against her wedding band scar. "Then maybe this is our time." She smiled through her tears. "After all these years, you still believe in us?" "No," he said gently. "I believe in you." And as she leaned in, resting her forehead against his, the years finally exhaled, leaving behind nothing but the quiet hum of love rediscovered. The next week, Daniel and Emily began meeting outside the bookstore, sometimes for breakfast at the small diner by the square, sometimes for long walks through the park where the leaves had started to fall like faded memories. It wasn't the kind of love that burned brightly anymore. It was softer now, quieter, but somehow stronger. One morning, Emily brought a box. "These are all your letters," she said, setting it on the table. "I read every one." Daniel hesitated before opening it. Inside were pages yellowed by time, words he'd written as a young man who believed love could conquer anything. "You kept them all this time?" he asked. "Even when you married him?" "Especially then," she whispered. "They reminded me who I really was." He looked at her, realizing how much of her life had been spent pretending to be someone else. "Then why now?" "Because I'm done pretending," she said. That evening, they returned to the pier where it all began. The sky glowed in shades of amber and pink, waves rolling gently against the wood. "When I left," Emily said, her voice trembling, "I thought I was protecting you from my father, but I think I was protecting myself from being brave." Daniel stepped closer. "And now?" She smiled faintly. "Now I want to be brave with you." He took her hand and held it tight. "Then let's stop waiting." The ocean breeze swept through their hair as the years between them faded into the sound of the sea. When she leaned in and kissed him, it wasn't like their first. It was slower, deeper, carrying every unspoken word they had held back for half a lifetime. For the first time in 17 years, they didn't feel lost anymore. They were finally found not by time, but by the love that refused to die. Autumn deepened, and with it came a peace Daniel had never known before. The small routines they shared: coffee in the mornings, long walks through the park, evenings spent reading side by side became the quiet rhythm of their new life. Yet beneath the calm, there lingered an unspoken fear that happiness, for them, had always been temporary. One evening, as they walked by the bookstore, Emily stopped suddenly. "I saw my father today," she said, her voice trembling. Daniel froze. He was at the cafe across the street, older, weaker. But when he saw me, he looked away. There was sadness in her eyes, not anger. "I thought I'd hate him forever," she whispered. "But I just felt sorry." Daniel took her hand. "That means you've finally forgiven him." She nodded. "Maybe, but part of me still wishes he could see this as and know he was wrong." Daniel smiled softly. "He doesn't have to." "We know." That night, They sat in the bookstore after closing. Surrounded by the faint smell of paper and dust, Emily leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever think we lost too much time?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, maybe we just needed the years apart too. Become the people who could finally make it work." She smiled. "So all that pain had a purpose." "Every bit of it," he said. "Because it brought you back." She reached up and touched his face. "Then I guess we finally made it home." Outside, rain began to fall again, just like the night they found each other. Only this time, it didn't feel like the world was ending. It felt like it was beginning again, quietly, gently, exactly where it should have all along. Winter crept in quietly, painting the town in silver and white. The bookstore felt warmer than ever, glowing with the soft light of candles and the hum of a small heater that struggled to keep up. Emily sat behind the counter, reading while Daniel fixed the old sign outside. When he came back in, his cheeks red from the cold, she smiled. "You still fix things like it's your job to save the world," she teased. He laughed. "Maybe I'm just making up for lost time." She closed her book and looked at him, her expression tender. "We've had enough lost time. Let's stop counting." That evening, they cooked dinner together in the small kitchen upstairs. Soup, bread, laughter. It felt simple, domestic, right. Afterward, Emily walked to the window, watching the snow fall. "I used to think happiness had to be loud," she said softly. "Big houses, big gestures, big plans. But this," she turned to him, smiling gently. "This quiet feels more like forever than anything I've ever known." Daniel joined her at the window, wrapping his arms around her. "Maybe love was never supposed to be about grand moments. Maybe it's about all the small ones we missed before." They stood there for a long time, the silence outside matching the peace within. Emily rested her head against his chest. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Don't let me run again." Daniel kissed her hair. "I couldn't even if I tried." Outside, snowflakes danced through the streetlights like falling stars, each one landing softly as if the world itself was finally learning how to forgive the past. And in that quiet, with nothing left to prove, they realized the years hadn't stolen their love. They'd only taught them how to cherish it. Years later, the world around them had changed, but Daniel and Emily's small corner of it remained the same quiet, full of books and laughter and the smell of morning coffee. The bookstore had grown into something more than a shop. It was a haven for people chasing forgotten dreams, just like they once had. Emily organized poetry nights. Daniel repaired old books, and together, they built the kind of peace neither of them had believed they deserved. One afternoon, as golden light filled the room, Emily found an old photo tucked inside a novel, the two of them as teenagers, smiling beneath the oak tree. "We were so sure forever would come easily," she said, tears glinting in her eyes. Daniel smiled, gently taking the photo. "It did," he said softly. "It just took us longer to get here." She laughed through her tears, leaning into him. "Do you ever wish we'd done it differently?" "No," he whispered, "because every wrong turn still led me back to you." Outside, their grown children helped customers, unaware of the history written in those walls. Emily looked out at them and then back at Daniel. "We built this, didn't we?" "With every broken piece," he said. She rested her hand on his, feeling the warmth that had carried them through decades of distance and doubt. "You never stopped loving me," she said quietly. "I never knew how," he replied. As the day faded, they stood by the window, the same way they had once stood by the sea, older now, but no less in love. And in that still moment, with the sound of pages turning and laughter drifting through the air, they both understood true love doesn't vanish with time. It waits patiently, quietly, until two hearts are ready to find their way home again. Some loves don't fade, they wait. Through years, mistakes, and silence, they stay alive in the quiet corners of our hearts, waiting for the right time to be heard again. Daniel and Emily's story reminds us that sometimes life brings us back to what was always meant to be, just when we've learned how to truly love. Tell me in the comments, do you believe true love can survive time? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more emotional stories like this. Every week, a new story, another reminder that love, no matter how late, always finds its way home.